If you call some people cheapskates, they are quite offended. But that's not the case with everybody. We found a gentleman over in Connecticut who thinks being called a cheapskate is one heck of a compliment. And he's put together an impressive layout with less money than you could ever imagine.
All right, stainless steel.
If you've ever wondered what type of person goes shopping at the local
Aluminum,
junkyard,
brass.
meet Maurice Decoster. If you like neighborhood rummage or tag sales, you'll like Maurice Decoster. He's the kind of guy who goes to the tag sale or the local junkyard and buys the things you're absolutely, positively sure no one would pay a penny for.
Some of the things I've found include my basic building materials. For instance, working in an outdoor environment, you want moisture-resistant wood. I use mahogany scraps. I've got teak. I use redwood that I've picked up. For instance, somebody getting rid of an old redwood or cedar picnic table. It gives me a supply of wood that I can use for a whole year in building the railroad. I also pick up things such as children's action figures or toys, which I can modify and make into figures for the railroad. I may find vehicles which are useful. And then just miscellaneous things like interesting plumbing or electrical fixtures, which I can use to simulate rooftop structures or detailing in a yard next to a gas station.
It's certainly true that one man's junk is another man's treasure. Just take a look at what Maurice Decoster has put together with items he's found at rummage sales, junkyards, and recycling centers. This is the Connecticut Central. It's also low-cost garden railroading. Decoster built this 250-foot-long compressed dog-bone layout in his back garden when he decided that a garden shouldn't have just pretty flowers. It should have something that moves.
I would like something to be interesting, unusual. I would guess I'd use the word plausible. It doesn't have to be scale, it doesn't have to be 100% historically accurate, but somebody looks at it and they see a complete scene and say, gee, that is possible, it could have been that way. But I also like to do that very inexpensively.
Okay, let's start with a look at the roadbed. Free compost, wood chips, and topsoil from the city recycling center. Styrofoam roadbed, because styrofoam is cheap. Take a look at the track. Maurice estimates it cost him about 50 cents a foot. All of it was hand-built except for the turnouts. The redwood railroad ties were cut from an old scrap picnic table and glued down. Bulk rail was fastened with common nails. Now let's take a look at some of the structures. He built them all at a cost of less than $2 a building. How in the world, you're asking, did he do that?
We built a coaling tower. In the house on top of the coaling tower is constructed of a styrofoam base to which cedar planks, which were ripped out of old house siding, are applied. The roof is tar paper, which is scribed, and it all sits on top of 3 coffee cans, which are glued together, screwed together, around which painted tar paper is put. It is all sitting in an old plastic shelf, so it can be lifted up and detailed. The whole structure probably cost me $2 or $3 in terms of the materials that are in it. It was a lot of fun to build. And in building it, I didn't follow any particular plans. I think I had seen a picture of a model that was being offered for sale in one of the hobby magazines. And I said, you know, that would be an interesting structure. So I proceeded to put one together.
When you walk into any garden railroad display, the first thing you see are the roofs of the buildings. For this reason, Decoster puts extra attention and some unusual materials on his roofs.
In a garden railway, if you stop to think about it, what do you see most or best, you see the roofs. And I think putting details on roofs make them more realistic. I was quite nicely complimented. Last week we were visited by friends whose young daughter just completed architectural school. And what was the first thing she noticed? Lo and behold, it was the roof. She said, "Boy, those look realistic."
The rolling stock and locomotives fall in the economical category as well. Many are second-hand. He applies an old weathered look, which obscures the imperfection of a quick, cheap paint job. It's worked out so well that he's building a second steam layout right next to the Connecticut Central. A little more whimsical, with a Hollywood theme, but just as reasonably priced. And by the way, all the plants, they were pretty cheap too. Many were acquired at end of the season sales at the local garden center. All in all, this is his rule of thumb. If it requires too much time or money, don't do it. Now, would you call that cheap or just plain smart?